With respect to the early release of prisoners, the Lord Chancellor and his team developed a package of which the early release of prisoners was just one part in order to make sure that we could restrict the spread of the virus within the prison estate. And the reason for that was to reduce the number of cases from the prison estate, which would be in our NHS. So our principal aim, as always, was to protect the NHS. And there were a number of changes that the Lord Chancellor made to the prison system in order to increase capacity, including cohorting within particular prisons and restrictions on the transfer of prisoners. But one part of it, as you quite rightly point out, was the ability in specific circumstances to release some prisoners early. And a set of tests were applied. It needed to be the case that their first offence, their index offence, was of a particular kind so that they did not pose a risk to the public. And it needed to be the case that they were close to the time when they would have been released anyway. And as you quite rightly point out, the prisoners at the front of the queue were those pregnant women who found themselves in prison. I know that there were at least 33 people who had been released. I think the number is higher than that now, but after this press conference I'll of course talk to the Ministry of Justice and make sure that you have the accurate figures. But as I say, I think it was around 33 who had been released this time last week. I think those were the confirmed figures, but we will get the absolutely accurate figures for you, and I'll hand over to Steve.
Yes, on prison health in general, so I absolutely believe that we should always be doing as much as we possibly can to support prison health. In fact, about this time last year, I spent a morning in a prison in the north of England looking at prison health services, and I was incredibly impressed with the dedication of the staff within the prison, but also staff and general practitioners coming in from outside to provide support. And clearly, at a time of crisis, a time of emergency such as coronavirus, it's really important that we place an additional focus on ensuring that prison health is responding. At the same time, it's important to ensure that we maintain safety and we reduce the chance of outbreaks and spread of COVID. But that's a very important balance, and it mirrors the balance in one sense in the community that was the subject of one of the previous questions as to how you balance between the sort of measures you might need to put in place to stop spread of the virus versus ensuring that the potential downsides of that are adequately managed as well. So yes, I do think it's incredibly important that we do that.
Thank you very much. Sienna, was there any particular point you wanted to follow up on? Sorry.
Yes, please. I just wanted to ask, what are you doing right now to prepare for the spike in prison population that's expected when restrictions are lifted and normal court activities get going again?
Well, you are right that at the moment the throughput from our courts into our prisons has been lower, and that's helped us to manage the situation in prison. And during the course of this week, we'll be looking in the Ministerial Implementation Group, which I chair, at both how we can make sure that there are more criminal cases which are appropriately heard, and also how we can ensure that the prison estate can manage. One part of that is making sure that we have access to additional facilities, and I think it's the case that a former secure training centre for young offenders in Medway has been made available to the prison estate, but it's also the case that the prison estate is working with the MOD and others to make sure that there are sufficient spaces as and when, as you quite rightly point out, more criminal cases are heard.